it's me again. And today we're going to be talking about the recent mess over at the Watcher YouTube channel. We're also going to unpack the sort of world that exists around YouTube studio production companies, as well as, for lack of a better term, this sort of YouTube industrial revolution. And don't worry, we're also going to analyze the sort of rhetoric around the two very controversial videos, the leaving YouTube and the an update video. So we'll really unpack like the whole span of this controversy. But first, links, sources, ways to support the channel all down below, including Patreon, YouTube memberships, Amazon, all that kind of stuff, and an email to suggest content as well. Thank you to my current YouTube members and patrons. Names on the screen. For this video, I want to expand beyond putting free content behind payroll bad, because you've probably heard that 100 times already from the videos that you have watched. We're going to look at the origin of the company and the sort of shift of philosophy and the way that people view YouTube content more personable and not necessarily one-to-one exchangeable for TV content, despite that being the goal for the Watcher YouTube channel. And we're going to talk about what happens when highly produced content takes over the platform. 3 parts of the video. Part 1, the origin of Watcher. Part 2, the controversial leaving YouTube and the response video. And Part 3, privatization and the industrialization of YouTube content. But ironically, before we get into that, because I too need to meet deadlines, we're going to talk about today's sponsor, Aura. Thank you to Aura for sponsoring the video. Listen, take a second out of your day for me and pop your name and or email into the search bar on Google or your desired search engine. And you might be very surprised on what you find. You might have found your information on a data broker site. Now, what's a data broker? Data brokers are entities that sell your personal information, and when they do so, your information is often sold to companies that do scam calls and phishing emails and things of the sort. With Aura, you sort of get this one-stop shop to protect yourself from spam. They even let you submit opt-out requests on your behalf, and there's also a bunch of other services that come with it, that being a VPN, parental controls, credit check, antivirus, and identity theft insurance, amongst other things. It is just a kind of big, almost like marketplace for all your internet security needs, all kind of just in your own little convenient single app. There's so many upsides to getting control over your information beyond annoying emails and phone calls. Aura's VPN secure connection also helps protect your information to prevent hackers from getting into your accounts or accessing your financials via internet banking and things of the sort. This is something that is so crucial when you work online as your job, as somebody like myself does. It is already more likely that you subscribe to a VPN or to credit score checking, identity theft protection, things of the like, that if you, with Aura, you can get all of that in one affordable price. Use my link down below or on what is on screen right now, aura.com/mikasrhetoric, to access Aura today and start your free trial. With the link, you get to try it for 2 weeks. And with my link, you can get a hold of your personal information and get a peace of mind with your time on the internet today. Thank you again, Aura, for sponsoring the video. Now let's get right into it. Part 1, the origin of Watcher. Watcher is a YouTube channel that was designed to double as a content network that launched in January of 2020. Watcher has 3 main faces and co-owners, Stephen Lim, Shane Madej, and Ryan Bergara. Ryan and Shane were very famous for being on BuzzFeed's very successful series, BuzzFeed Unsolved. All 3 of them, however, were BuzzFeed employees and worked on videos on the channel. And while they were late to the trend to a certain degree, they made me feel really sentimental with the leaving BuzzFeed video style they had with their launch video, talking about how they wanted more freedom in making their content and more control over things that were going on. Watcher, from the second it came to be, had a focus on crowdfunding, with the making the Watcher series being primarily Patreon and member exclusive. So in order to kind of get in tune with what was happening on the platform and be able to access kind of just behind the scenes things and things of the sort, that was members only content.
Sure, quick note before we get into the episode, this first episode will be free on YouTube, but all subsequent episodes will be exclusive to Patreon, as well as a bunch of other fun stuff, so head on over there to check that out. But for now, enjoy making one.
Now, that is something that is not uncommon by any stretch of the imagination. Lots of people have members only content. I keep my Patreon and members very cheap because I don't want to have a lot of promises because my filming and output schedule is like so ridiculous that I'm not really able to like streamline it to put content out in time, right? Or over an extended period of time, which when you are somebody like these sorts of kind of corporate YouTube channels have a lot more ability to do. But from the first video, they were already developing via a Patreon. And there's also a very strong presence in discussing finances from the inception of the channel, even in the, which is publicly available, first episode of Making Watcher.
Sending our very first pitch deck to our very first potential investor. You ready?
Done. Wait, did it actually send? Yes.
Okay, so much is sent. Okay, now we wait for all the money to start coming in. Just kidding.
We stumbled and bumbled our entire way through the pitch.
We didn't know what we were talking about.
It's not a good sign when you get stumped by the first question, which is, what is your company?
The initial goal of Watcher was to create high quality, they describe television quality based YouTube content, and would have multiple series run per week, kind of rotating with each other. If you look at how the channel is right now, it is not like that anymore. They've kind of leaned into specific series more. I think they've kind of lost the sort of plot of the cyclical content. So I'll put a little clip on how the channel was supposed to be running.
And now a handy guide to the Watcher release schedule. Let's take a look at the weekly calendar, where you'll see that Wednesdays and Thursdays are your new favorite days of the week. These other days, they mean nothing now. They are garbage, they are trash. This week we've had a bit of fun and dropped a Watcher Weekly and the first episode of Puppet History on a Friday. But starting next week, you can look forward to a new Watcher Weekly every Wednesday, followed by a new series episode every Thursday. Now, we'll be rolling out our 7 new series cyclically. For example, having released episode 1 of Puppet History this week, next week you'll see episode 1 of Spooky Small Talk. Then week 3 brings us episode 1 of Top 5 Beatdown. Then it's episode 1 of Homemade, Weird Wonderful World, Grocery Run, and Tourist Trapped. And then it's back to the start for the second episode of Puppet History, and so on and so forth. This release schedule will allow more feedback for our various series and help the team at Watcher Entertainment decide what you want us to shoot next after we finish airing these initial pilot seasons. This has been a handy guide to the Watcher release schedule. Thank you!
Which obviously, like, things change. That's not really that big of an issue. But it's just interesting to kind of see how rough it's almost been in, like, a lot of the growing pains throughout the 4 years. And I feel like it was kind of predominant from the inception of the channel that they were shooting a lot higher sometimes than maybe they were able to. I watched a bunch of their videos from the channel because prior to this, I had never heard of any of them in their lives. This is another one of those instances of Mika didn't have internet until 2017 vibes where, like, I'd never got into BuzzFeed. I never got into people who left BuzzFeed. Like I said, I was sentimental for the videos, but, like, it was just because it was an interesting phenomenon. But realistically, I've seen, like, the Saie Nygaard one and, like, maybe in one more, if that. But it's just something that is, you know, indicative of working for somebody like BuzzFeed. I thought the puppet history videos were super cute and could have been really good, like, introductory teaching content for people like history teachers and stuff. I teach English, like, per my master's degree in teaching, blah, 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 like, teaching certificate stuff. But often they throw us into history anyway. So it'll be interesting. I feel like I'll actually kind of remember these in the back of my mind. But I always love, like, accessible learning content, and especially when it's presented kind of to adults in the way that Watcher's content was, because I think, like, there's always an opportunity to learn, and I love when people learn. That's why this channel has the inception of this channel as well, where it's kind of like I'm trying to teach while integrating kind of YouTube tea content at the same time. But sadly, they have not run an episode of this puppet series for 9 months, along with several other series have seemed to have fallen to the dust. Even when we look at the Watcher channel as it stands now, which I'll do right this second just to make sure I'm very correct, many series did fall to the wayside. For example, even like the Watcher Weekly, which was supposed to be kind of like the humanization of the 3 heads of the company. And I think when you lose, like, your substance piece like that, that is also something that can potentially turn people away from this personable nature that you try to present yourselves in. Now, this, as I mentioned, this cycling format did not last, as they've seemed to have leaned into mystery and gaming content, which to me sort of rings sentiments to, like, the BuzzFeed days. When I look at this channel, to me personally, it really screams BuzzFeed. Mind you, So to some extent, you could say the same thing about somebody like Saie, for example. But at the same time, she didn't make like an industrial production studio type thing like BuzzFeed. She almost kind of just continued the content that she was making. And even then, there's stories about her life. She has her wedding. She has a lot more kind of personal stuff integrated throughout, which I feel like she presents the more successful separation from BuzzFeed, because I also think she has way more subscribers. Because she does. Homegirl's got 10 million subs. Meanwhile, watches at 2.84 million. And she also easily cracks 1 million views a video. It's actually, I would say, clears 2 million easy every video, which is a very impressive feat. Now, mind you, she uploads every few months or so, but at the same time, I think she'll be fine. So, over time, they gradually hired more employees, moved offices, for the idea of further expanding. And this is sort of where we get to the controversy, which we'll get to now in part 2. So part 2, the controversial leaving YouTube and the response, video that came with it, which is called an update, by the way. Hello. So I'm going to discuss these videos in the context of like the inception of the channel that I just described, along with what they actually say. We're not going to be doing any sort of silly body language stuff because I saw you observe already, which was weird anyway. Something that has been kind of nagging in my brain since I started this process a couple days ago. This channel aggressively screams millennial to me, from the way that they dress, the demeanor, the decor of the office, plus they're sort of aggressive. Oh, they also dress like Disney parents, I feel like, but that's besides the point. Plus, there's sort of aggressive ring to sentiment and sentimental value. And I think that's something that comes into the Goodbye YouTube video as well. The Goodbye YouTube video begins with the individual journey of the 3 co-owners of the company. And this was to give reason to the decision and to kind of they understand that people are not likely going to be super happy with it. A lot of people say that when I was looking on like Twitter and stuff like that, there was a general response of they like did this blindly, like they didn't do any research, they didn't do whatever. I can see by the way that they're trying to build themselves up as just like people. They're trying to humanize the entity. That is something that I don't think people do if they think that people are going to agree with their decision.
To make something for BuzzFeed that's like that, why couldn't we not bet on ourselves and then perhaps do the same thing at our own little shop? When the 3 of us huddled together around my little kitchen table in my apartment, we kind of wrote down the mission statement of just, we want to make a studio or a platform where we can make unscripted television caliber content on the internet. And to that point, nobody had quite done that. Full-blown developed shows had not been kind of a thing on YouTube to that point. Especially when we first started Unsolved and Worth It, and we wanted to continue that trend over here at Watcher.
I think the philosophy of Watcher is us very earnestly exploring something without much irony. Granted, we're like when we're doing our Ghost Hunts, it's a jokey channel, but I think underneath it all, there's like a genuine interest in stuff and a passion for exploring, the stuff that we're interested in.
Also, that's something that's notable at the very end of the video. It is said, like, if you no longer follow us from this point. So they know that people are going to drop off. I think it's unrealistic to describe this as something that they knew was going to be 100% carryover successful. This, by the way, is like a very classic emotional appeal or like pathos. When you learn about rhetoric in like your very, very first introductory class, you're usually shown the ethos, pathos, logos triangle. Ethos being the persona of the person, pathos being, this is very, very oversimplified, pathos being the emotional appeal, and logos being your sort of logical foundation with like usually statistics or evidence or, your formation of your argument more or less, which they do so as well. Their sort of logos in this presentation is like the clear reality that stuff costs money. And they talk about the concept of like YouTube advertisement and the kind of being at the whim of the sponsors as well. They moved to discussing virality culture and the long hours and contributions they did to BuzzFeed and how this kind of led to them wanting to shift gears into Watcher. Conversations like this are very, very common in the Leaving BuzzFeed videos. I think while like I said, I haven't watched every single one, I have seen clips and I've seen snippets and conversations around it. And that is something that typically comes up. That is kind of the primary reason you'd want to leave, right? If you're a recognizable personality and you're paid a salary at BuzzFeed, and you, by your views, can tell that you could easily match that outside in just AdSense alone, then it's kind of a no-brainer, because also you're then able to put out the production on your own. Now, obviously, there's going to be limitations such as production value, because BuzzFeed has studios and things like that. But when we're talking about somebody like Watcher, that was kind of the idea when moving out, because they were going to develop their own production studio. Bringing it into tying it in with BuzzFeed specifically is something that is designed to really make people sympathize with their freedom because of the cultural phenomenon of those leaving videos. Because they want people to see them as individuals that are just happen to be doing this fun video thing, rather than like a corporation and a studio conglomerate, because those are typically seen as evil. They want to separate themselves from the image of BuzzFeed so that you don't want to treat them like BuzzFeed. Because BuzzFeed especially has really fallen out of favor, I find, in the past 5 years or so. For example, the closing of BuzzFeed News last year. The issue is that you can give that freedom to individuals. I feel like as a society or whatever, like the feeling is that you can give freedom to those people easily, but that doesn't necessarily extend to another corporation. It's pretty well known that as far as social media goes, YouTube gives you a lot of freedom and allows you to pay. And it almost makes that starts to begin to feed into like the ungrateful influencer energy as well. It continues with soft music and discusses the way that they hired more staff. Now, this I would say is almost a smart move, because now, while people might not feel for influencers that are getting easily 200,000 to 2 million views a video, therefore obviously generating a lot of AdSense, let alone the brand deals that come with views that high, but I feel like it is more realistic to pity somebody who's, working under them. Like, people could feel bad for the bookkeeper or for the admin or for the camera guy that, makes 10% of the owner's earnings per year and would lose their job if this conglomerate were to go under, which they do say would happen if they stayed on YouTube.
I'm so proud of what we've built here at Watcher. My proudest moments have been being able to hire incredible people. It's like growing our staff from 3 to 6 to 10 to 20 to 25. I'm proud of the fans and the community that we've fostered.
Maybe that's the best part. The tangible effect of it is like you're out in public and people are like, hey, wow, we watched a lot of your content during a tough time and it really helped us. And that's always really nice. Especially when we do our live shows, you notice that it's pretty fascinating. The audience that we've attracted are also weirdos.
Which to me is so silly which again, obviously I have the added context of AdSense, but if I take, the thing is it's not even proportionate, right? Because I think can I look at my analytics right now? I think my highest earning video didn't even make close to what they're making. So my highest earning individual video ever, it says that I earned, with 110,000 views, roughly, I earned $1,500. So even if you were to do that proportionally, right, which it's not, that would make a 1 million view video $15,000 in AdSense alone. Now, again, I'm saying that's not how that works, because if you retain more views, if you retain more subscribers and you have bigger numbers, it kind of goes up on a curve more so than anything else. As a creator, it makes it really hard for me to feel bad for them. Especially because typically YouTube is about almost kind of like a personable thing. It's kind of about the struggle, when it's, the fluctuating money, the fluctuating views, and the difficulties that come with that. But it remains out of touch because it moves to more conversations from the owners. And they said they have issues. This is where I got really annoyed. They said they have issues making content for advertisers, and that they need to have their entire thing be entirely crowdfunded, despite the fact that they already have tons of patrons and tons of members. And it's still linked in all of their, pages and stuff. And they have a tier that's $35 a month. And you're not, if you pay only the $7.50 Canadian a month, you don't even have access to all the Patreon. And there is a tier, sorry, I didn't even scroll, I didn't realize there was an arrow. There is a tier for 142 Canadian dollars a month that comes with signed society membership card, access to live shows and quarterly meet and greets virtually, AMAs with Watcher members, exclusive merch, so you have to pay for it still, to what I gather, exclusive t-shirt, and a Discord access. And what happened is, I'm looking at the Watcher Weekly, it seems that they moved it to Patreon only. So they were already making exclusive content and privatizing the content before they even did this, but they were just more quiet about it. Now, when they talk about the making content for advertisers, this is where I get annoyed, because like when they're doing this to put their content into a streaming service, right? Even though it's just comical because people are already constantly complaining that was this better than cable TV in the first place. Y'all make the most milquetoast, brand-friendly content on earth. I promise you, a puppet talking about the bubonic plague isn't gonna get demonetized. You're trying to take these talking points and these things that people use who are struggling creators. If I get demonetized, my check for the month could knock out in half almost, depending on the success of the video. I've had a couple of successful videos that could have really helped me become demonetized because of the content that I'm discussing. One example is my Colleen Ballinger video got demonetized. And also, that highly limits the reach for these smaller channels. Meanwhile, this channel, I was watching, I think, the Making Watcher episode from 2 years ago that was uploaded way before that, and they had it on Patreon, they put it up, blah, blah, blah. Because again, they've been privatizing content. They talked about like the launch and when they put it up and everything like that. They had met the subscriber threshold before they'd even, for monetization, before they'd even put up a video. And the measly 2-minute trailer met the 400 watch hours immediately. So they never even missed a single step in gaining money from the YouTube AdSense. So it's just weird, because now with this streaming service, they were saying that they were going to make YouTube a place for only trailers and pilots, so first episodes of series. And they end with, in a way where I could only compare it to Shane Dawson's oh, well, you don't have to buy my merch, you don't have to do it kind of mentality, where they're kind of please buy it, please do it, we're going to literally close if you don't, because we're going to make it your fault that we hired 30 people for, making content a couple times a week, when their views were also doing well when there was only 4 of them, or 3 of them plus a couple of other people, which I'm not saying don't hire anybody, but it's just weird to kind of force that into the public's responsibility. Now, they open with an update video. They're very quick to say that they messed up.
Hey everyone, last Friday we announced that we're leaving YouTube and launching our new streaming platform.
We messed up. A lot of you spoke out with extremely valid comments and concerns, and we want to take the time now to address those.
And the model has been changed to now all the content that you're seeing is just not going to be timely. It's all going to be a month old and ad-free or whatever. And it ignores their responsibility that they had, that they've put themselves in a position of overstaffing. Because I promise you, I'm looking just on my screen right now, they have a bunch of these mystery files videos. They're already 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.5. They have 6.5 million views of videos in the same month of just the newly uploaded videos. So 6.5 million, if we're even doing my bad number, like I said, mine's gonna be way lower than that. My AdSense is way lower than theirs. If we did 1,500 per 100,000, so that we're gonna have to do times 10, 15,000 per million times 6.5, that is $100,000 almost of ad revenue in a month. In a month. And that's assuming direct proportionality, which it's not. That's assuming no brand deals, and I can guarantee there's going to be some if I start clicking through all of those. And Patreon's not included. So you've got $100,000 in AdSense in the same roughly, let's say, 40 days, right? And you're going to try to make it our fault for you overstaffing. Now, obviously, I'm assuming a lot with these numbers. I'm assuming blah, blah, blah. But like I said, I would say I'm heavily underballing it. I'm heavily lowballing it. And again, just observable by the millions of views thing, I don't think people want to hear it. It's very different if I say I can't really do this anymore. I have to put it, I'm going to put the content behind a paywall, hopefully put up some of that stuff, whatever, because it's just not feasible for me anymore. Or because, maybe it being public is being an issue because let's say, like, because I teach or whatever, or I intend to teach rather. It's going to be something that's like way more like realistic than if I said like, oh, I hired like 2 editors, I hired, a thumbnail guy, I hired whatever, and now I can't afford to pay them because I only put out like 2 videos a month. Like, it's just not something that's like tangible to people, And then with that, I want to move into like the privatization and industrialization for part 3. Because YouTube at its inception was designed to be a place where people were able to share personal videos. And once purchased by Google, YouTube began the partner program. Given the sea of unregulated content being put onto the website, there were many growing pains in what deems to be like monetization-friendly content, with many correlating the words of individual creators to essentially the randomized ads that were placed on the videos. For example, if you see, let's say, like an ad for like the Republican campaign on my video, it wasn't me who did that. But in the same note, they're not co-signing what I say in this video either. But people kind of deem that relationship to be both-sided sometimes, and especially back in like 2016, and especially tenfold with advertisers like sponsor people. I do want to say that the sponsor doesn't know what video I'm putting out before I send it to them. And like a lot of the times I don't know how deep they're watching into the video, that they're not necessarily that focused on the actual content, rather where it's placed, rather if it meets all the FTC guidelines, etc. Now, obviously I'm not on the watcher back end, but as someone who was lucky enough to have very few videos demonetized, but almost every single time I breathe on a live stream, that's yellowed immediately, I want to say that the Millennial Mystery Inc. ghost hunting is not gonna be something that's getting that yellow $sign. The boo-hoo we don't make enough money thing, if that bothers me a lot, as someone who's like not even really an avid viewer of their content, I can't imagine what other people feel. I don't understand how you ignore that the biggest thing about YouTube and the biggest appeal to YouTube, that it's free. Okay. I just got distracted because I just found the clips section of my YouTube channel while I was filming. That completely threw me off. Hold on. We were talking about demonetization and yellow $signs and blah, 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 blah. As I mentioned, Watcher from his first day began running a Patreon, and they met all the thresholds in advance. So they've clearly been like making bank since the jump. And I think that, especially with YouTube, it's a sore spot for people to pity these sorts of big channels and big corporation channels, because so many people work really, really hard to even meet the base monetization. There are hundreds of thousands of channels that never meet monetization but regularly put out content. It is not something that is inherently granted to every single person. It's not necessarily like a right to be monetized on the platform no matter how much content that you put out. And YouTube really feels like a place to create content on your own terms with kind of some restraints, which is the very premise that their channel launched on with the trailer. And I know for me, for example, like it was months after I started like making videos that I was able to be monetized, and months after that, I was able to get my first measly $100 check. It's just something that is not that kind of easy to get with. To me, Watcher seems to be a new BuzzFeed, and it's maybe the thing they sought to destroy in a certain way. And it feels like it kind of takes the humanity out of the content, especially to pass the responsibility on to the masses. Because it's not like without people paying for it, they don't make money on the content, because that's just not true. And it's sad because YouTube is one of the last remaining places to have a sustainable creative career. And for people like this to kind of make it seem impossible, it kind of further drags down the morale of the people around them. And content on YouTube by nature is accessible. That's what it's designed to do. People don't want to pay for it because of that. And it's so prominent that people don't want to pay for it that I still see memes about how nobody wants YouTube Premium. And it's just something that I feel like it's like we have so little left. You know what I mean? Like Netflix used to be $8, no ads. And now it's like you've got Netflix, Disney Plus, you've got Prime, you've got Crave, Discovery, Hulu, There's a bunch of other ones that like other countries have that like they don't have here, like Stack TV or something like that. Doesn't matter. The thing that was once good, let's say like $8 Netflix that had like everything on it, that got ruined too. It's just something that is so sad, kind of the world around us. That's why I don't want to ever have to like, I don't want to privatize my content or anything like that, or I don't want to be somebody who does that, because I see the joy and the value for the things being accessible in the way that they are. And with the current kind of economic state, for example, and people having less money than ever, it seems, for a lot of people, YouTube is the only way that they access content. I know for myself, when I moved out 17, and I did not have a single subscription service or any sort of paid content until I was almost 20 years old, I think. And because it was just not feasible, I couldn't afford it. So, and I think that obviously it's not necessarily an inherent right to be able to watch videos or whatever, but people do seek joy in being able to access the content, and oftentimes very high quality content on these websites. There are just too many things that remain public, few places that don't have a ton of barriers, that to place a barrier upon your audience to watch only your content, because that's the other thing. Streaming services have hundreds of thousands of different things in them, or maybe not hundreds of them, but you know what I mean, thousands of different things on them. Just one YouTube channel does not have that much content, even though they make it seem so by the kind of bloating by the page has, but I digress. To conclude, we went through the origin of the channel, the controversy, and how people view content online. I also got distracted by looking at the clips on my channel, apparently. Anyway, links, sources, ways to support the channel all down below, including email, TGS, logo form content. Thank you again to Aura for sponsoring the video, keeping the channel alive without expense to y'all, clearly. Like, that's the kind of the big basis of this message. And while sponsors are slay and cool and helps keep the content kind of accessible, I'm still going to be, keeping it pushing without them. But if I do or do not have any. And I think this is the last one of the huge slew that I've had recently. So there'll be some freedom in that regard, hopefully. Anyway, thanks again to everyone for watching. And I'll see you when I see you. Bye.
I've never done anything like this before.
Calm down. Look, I'm not a cop.